Iran just fired ballistic missiles at Israel, and the ceasefire that Pete Hegseth declared a decisive military victory is collapsing in real time. Right now, as you watch this video, sirens are going off across northern Israel. The IDF has confirmed it detected multiple ballistic missile launches from Iran targeting Israeli territory. 2 missiles were intercepted. The military says more are coming. This is not a drill. This is not a provocation. This is a direct missile strike from Iran on Israeli soil, breaking a ceasefire that was supposed to have ended the most dangerous military confrontation in the Middle East in a generation. And the question that Washington refuses to answer is now impossible to avoid. How did we get? Less than 2 months ago, Pete Hegseth stood at a Pentagon podium and told the world that Operation Epic Fury was over. He declared, and these are his exact words, a decisive military victory. He said Iran had been rendered combat ineffective for years to come. He said Iran's defense industrial base had been completely destroyed. He said Iran begged for this ceasefire. He actually used the word begged. He compared the 40-day war to a biblical test. He invoked divine providence. He stood there in front of cameras and told the American people that the most powerful military in the world had just won. Today, Iran fired ballistic missiles at Israel. Let that sink in. The country that was supposedly reduced to rubble, the military that was declared combat ineffective, the regime that supposedly begged for peace, just launched a ballistic missile attack on a U.S. ally. And it gets worse. This didn't happen out of nowhere. The warning signs have been building for weeks. On June 1st, Iran suspended peace talks entirely, telling American negotiators that no dialogue would take place until fighting in Lebanon stopped. Trump contradicted this the same day, telling ABC News that talks were continuing at a rapid pace. He called the Lebanon situation a little glitch and said he turned it around very quickly. He said a deal was reachable within the next week. That was 6 days ago. Today, missiles are flying. This is a pattern that has defined this entire conflict. Hegseth says we negotiate with bombs, then claims peace is imminent. Trump threatens whole civilizations will die tonight, then calls it diplomacy in progress. The ceasefire that supposedly ended the war was announced less than 2 hours before Trump's own apocalyptic deadline. Pakistan brokered it in a last-minute scramble. Iran's foreign minister confirmed it while Iran simultaneously declared its own victory. 2 sides, 1 ceasefire, both claiming they won, neither fully committed to stopping. And the result is what you're watching right now. Here is what we know in the last hour. Israel struck Hezbollah targets in Beirut's southern suburbs earlier today. The IDF said this was in response to Hezbollah firing missiles into northern Israel first. Iran then responded to the Beirut strikes by launching ballistic missiles at Israeli territory. The IDF says it is at a high level of readiness for additional scenarios, both defensive and offensive. The ceasefire that Trump brokered on April 8th and called a historic achievement is now functionally collapsed. The same ceasefire that Hegseth used to declare victory at the Pentagon. And here is the critical context that every American watching this needs to understand. This isn't just a Middle East problem. American troops are still in the region. U.S. military bases across the Gulf have already been struck during this conflict. The USS Nimitz carrier group is operating in those waters. The Strait of Hormuz, the choke point through which 20% of the world's oil passes, has been closed, and energy prices have already spiked. Trump said last week that if Iran killed U.S. troops, that would be a good reason to restart the war. That is not reassurance. That is a countdown. And Hegseth's strategy throughout has been to make threats that leave no room for miscalculation. We'll be hanging around, he said after the ceasefire. We are going to make sure Iran complies. If they don't, we will take it out. Now compliance has failed. Missiles are in the air. And the man who said Iran's military was destroyed for years is the same man who will now have to explain what comes next. But nobody in the mainstream media is asking the questions that actually matter. Not how this was allowed to happen. Not why the victory declarations came weeks before the ceasefire even held. Not why the same administration that leaked war plans through Signal chats, remember that, the same SecDef who discussed strike coordinates over an unsecured messaging app, is now managing the most volatile military situation on Earth. Not why Trump is simultaneously claiming talks are moving rapidly and threatening to restart a war that he already declared won. And not why the American people were told this was over when it clearly wasn't. Because when Hegseth stood at that podium on April 8th and declared decisive victory, the Strait of Hormuz was still closed. Iranian missiles were still stockpiled. Hezbollah had already rejected the ceasefire. The pieces were already in place for exactly what you're watching right now. The victory was a press release. The war was still running. And while politicians took victory laps, the situation on the ground never actually changed. Iran still controls the strait. Hezbollah still has weapons. The peace talks in Pakistan produced nothing. And today, for the first time since April 8th, Iranian ballistic missiles are targeting Israeli civilians again. Here is what accountability looks like in this moment. Every senator who cheered Hegseth's victory speech should be asked to respond. Every anchor who ran the decisive military victory headline without questioning, it should be asked to respond. And Pete Hegseth himself, the man who said Iran begged for the ceasefire, the man who declared their military combat ineffective, the man who said we will hang around to ensure compliance, should be sitting in front of Congress right now explaining how his decisive victory turned into ballistic missiles over northern Israel in less than 60 days. This story is still developing. The IDF has confirmed more launches may be coming. Trump has not yet made a public statement. Hegseth has not appeared before cameras. The White House is silent. And somewhere over the skies of northern Israel, air defense batteries are working to intercept whatever comes next. The ceasefire is gone. The victory was never real. And the question that was always hanging over this entire conflict is now unavoidable. What is the actual plan? Not the press conference plan, not the Truth Social Post plan, the real plan. Because right now, from where the rest of the world is sitting, there isn't one. Subscribe and stay with us as this story develops. This is not the end of this conversation. It is the beginning of the accountability that should have started on April 8th.